You didn't stumble upon these words by accident. Life has a way of bringing to us exactly what we are ready to hear. Exactly when our hearts and minds have ripened for it. If you're here, listening, it means something within you has already crossed a threshold. A quiet but powerful shift in frequency that now allows you to perceive one of the most profound truths about existence, the observer effect. Now, I don't mean this as some distant scientific term locked away in a laboratory. I mean it as a living, breathing reality that touches every moment of your life. The observer effect is not just about particles or physics. It is about the way your very consciousness is shaping the world around you. The way you look at life, the way you focus, the emotions you pour into your attention. These are not passive acts. They are creative forces. For most of our lives, we are taught to believe that reality stands separate from us, as if the world is a stage, and we are merely watching the play unfold. But the truth is far more intimate. Reality is not standing still, waiting to be observed. Reality is alive, dynamic, responsive. It reflects back to you the quality of your gaze. It bends in subtle ways under the weight of your attention. And when you recognize this, you begin to see yourself not as a bystander, not as a victim of random circumstances, but as a participant, a co-creator in every unfolding moment. Think about it for a second. Have you ever noticed how when you keep worrying about a problem, it somehow seems to grow larger, almost feeding off your attention? Or how, when you hold someone in your heart with love, they show up in your life in ways that feel warmer, more open, more alive? This is the observer effect at work. It's not coincidence. It's not imagination. It's the fabric of reality responding to the frequency of your awareness. You see, your consciousness is not just looking at the world, it's selecting from it. Imagine standing in front of a vast field of possibilities, like countless doors stretched out before you. Each door is a potential version of your life. One leads to struggle, another to peace. One opens into scarcity, another into abundance. All those doors already exist, and the simple, powerful act of your observation, the quality of your focus, the emotion you bring to it, is what turns a possibility into an experience. You don't force the door open. You don't need to hammer at it. You simply look with enough presence, and the door opens by itself. This is where many of us stumble. We think creating a better life is about pushing harder, striving more, trying to control outcomes with sheer effort. But have you noticed how exhausting that path becomes? It's like swimming against the current of a river. Your arms tire, your breath shortens, and still the current carries you back. The observer effect invites you into another way. Instead of straining, it's about aligning. Instead of pushing, it's about allowing. When you soften into awareness, when you observe with love rather than fear, when you allow yourself to feel the quiet knowing that life is listening, reality begins to respond effortlessly, as naturally as the river carries a leaf downstream. For me, this understanding didn't come as a theory. It came through struggle. There were times in my life when everything felt heavy, when problems seemed to multiply, no matter how much I thought I was solving them. I didn't realize that my very act of obsessing, replaying, analyzing with emotion was collapsing more and more of those unwanted possibilities into my reality. The more I stared at the cracks, the more the wall crumbled, until one day, out of sheer exhaustion, I stopped. I sat in silence, no longer fighting, no longer grasping, just observing the present moment without agenda. And in that silence, I felt something shift. Reality loosened. New doors appeared, where before there had only been walls. That was the beginning of recognizing the observer effect, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. And it changes everything. Because once you know that life is not happening to you but through you, you can no longer play small. You can no longer believe yourself powerless. Every thought, every glance of attention, every heartbeat of emotion is an act of creation. I share this with you not to overwhelm, but to liberate. You don't need to get it all perfect. You don't need to figure out every step. All that's required is awareness. Gentle, honest awareness of what you're focusing on, what you're feeding with your attention. Because what you observe, you invite. What you resist, you reinforce. And what you allow with love, you bring to life. So if you are here today, listening, it is because a deeper part of you already knows this. Maybe you've felt the synchronicities piling up. Maybe you've sensed that life is more fluid than you were told. Maybe you've begun to suspect that your gaze is more powerful than any external circumstance. This is not wishful thinking. This is the truth of who you are. You are not a passive observer standing on the sidelines. You are a conscious being, participating in the dance of creation with every moment of attention. And the observer effect is simply the universe's way of whispering back, I hear you. I feel you. I mirror you. 1. The body as a doorway. There comes a moment in life when you begin to realize that the body is not just something you inhabit, not just a shell carrying you from place to place, but a living mirror. It is both doorway and compass, showing you with startling honesty the quality of your own observation. You don't need complex philosophies or advanced spiritual practices to witness this. The evidence is here, in your breath, in your muscles, in the quiet signals that rise and fall within your skin. Think of the mornings when you wake up, and the first thing that greets you in the mirror is your own criticism. Maybe you notice the wrinkles, the heaviness in your eyes, the aches that remind you of age or wear. The body feels heavier then, doesn't it? Almost as if it bows under the weight of your disapproval. The more you look with judgment, the more drained you become. And yet, on other mornings, those rare mornings when you look at yourself with gentleness, perhaps after a night of gratitude, or simply because you allow yourself to soften, you notice something extraordinary. Your body seems lighter. The lines on your face feel like stories instead of flaws. The ache in your joints eases, if only slightly. It is as though the body listens to the way you see it. This is no accident. The body is consciousness translated into form, and it bends to the gaze of the observer, just as reality itself does. When you observe your body with love, it doesn't just feel different, it responds differently. Cells regenerate, tension releases, energy flows more freely. When you observe your body with fear or resentment, the opposite occurs. The body tightens, closes, prepares for defense. You don't need a medical degree to sense this. You've lived it. Each of us has. I have known seasons of deep struggle with my own body. Times when illness or pain made me feel trapped, betrayed by the very vessel that carried me. In those moments, I fought against myself, glaring at the body as if it were an enemy to be conquered. And the more I fought, the worse I felt. Healing seemed distant, almost impossible. But something shifted when I stopped fighting. When instead of seeing the body as a battlefield, I began to see it as a teacher. Every symptom, every discomfort, every wave of fatigue was a form of communication. The body was not punishing me, it was speaking to me. And once I softened into listening, the war ended. The body, you see, is a doorway to awareness. It is the most immediate, tangible feedback loop for your consciousness. Observe it harshly, and you walk through a doorway into exhaustion, into resistance. Observe it with appreciation, and you step through a doorway into energy, into vitality. The doorway is always there. Which side you walk into depends on how you look. Have you ever noticed how food tastes different depending on your state of mind? When you eat hurriedly, while criticizing yourself or life, the meal feels flat, heavy. But when you pause, offer gratitude, even silently, The same food nourishes you in ways that go beyond calories. The body digests differently when it is observed with love. The same water refreshes more deeply when you drink it with thankfulness. The body responds not just to what enters it physically, but to the energy with which you receive it. And perhaps you have also felt this in the presence of others. When someone looks at you with genuine appreciation, your shoulders straighten without effort. Your face softens. Your energy rises. The body glows under loving observation. The same is true inwardly. When you look at yourself that way, your body blooms under your own gaze. For years, I believed healing was about fixing, about forcing the body back into balance through control and discipline. But healing, as the body teaches, is about relationship. It is about observing without violence, about listening instead of condemning. When you hold your body as you would hold a beloved child, patiently, gently, with compassion, it reveals its resilience. Healing becomes less about imposing change and more about allowing what is natural to rise again. Imagine for a moment your body as a garden. If you stand over the garden scolding it, calling the soil barren and the plants ugly, the garden does not flourish. It withdraws. But if you crawl beside it, tending, watering, appreciating even the smallest sprouts, life responds. The garden grows. The body is no different. It listens to the quality of your attention. And here is the deeper truth. Your body is not separate from your consciousness. It is the extension of it, translated into matter. When you understand this, you stop seeing illness or fatigue as enemies and begin to see them as invitations, signs pointing you back to alignment. If the body is tired, it is asking for rest. If the body aches, it is asking for gentler observation. If the body shines with health, it is reflecting your state of coherence. Always, it is showing you what kind of observer you are being. So I invite you, even now, to soften your gaze toward yourself. Place a hand over your chest or your stomach, not to fix, not to control, but to acknowledge. Whisper words of gratitude. Thank you for carrying me. Thank you for breathing. Thank you for staying with me through all these years. You will feel it. The subtle shift in energy, the warmth that stirs under your hand. That is your body responding to your observation. The body is not an obstacle. It is not a burden. It is a living doorway through which consciousness learns to observe itself with love. Every wrinkle, every scar, every rhythm of your heart is a reminder that you are not separate from your creation. You are living in the mirror of your own awareness. And when you begin to look with kinder eyes, you will discover what I discovered: the body is not against you. It is for you, always for you, always waiting for the moment when you stop criticizing long enough to notice the miracle it has been all along. 2. The intensity of observation and emotion. There is a quiet law that life seems to obey, though most of us never name it. Whatever you look at, with the fullness of your heart, becomes larger. Whatever you observe with intensity, with feeling, begins to shape itself into the fabric of your experience. It is not the fleeting thought that moves mountains, but the emotion you attach to that thought. The pulse of fear, the warmth of love, the heaviness of doubt, the lightness of joy. I learned this not from books, but from years of watching how my life mirrored my inner storms. In the seasons when fear ruled my gaze, the world seemed to echo it back. Everywhere I turned, bills piled higher, relationships felt fragile, as if everyone I loved might vanish at any moment. Even the body trembled, caught in the grip of imagined catastrophes. I would wake in the night with a pounding heart, only to realize it was not life itself attacking me. It was my own observation, laced with fear, collapsing those possibilities into form. And yet, there were other seasons, moments when I softened, when I let gratitude or love guide my attention. Then, almost magically, doors opened, People showed up with kindness. Solutions appeared where before there had only been walls. The external world had not suddenly transformed. It had responded to the change in my gaze. Fear builds cages. Love opens pathways. The universe, as I have come to understand, is neutral in its essence. It does not sit in judgment, labeling experiences as good or bad. It responds to frequency. The way a chamber responds to sound, strike a note of sorrow, and sorrow echoes back. Strike a note of peace, and peace reverberates through the room of your life. The universe is like an amplifier. It magnifies whatever you offer through the quality of your observation. Consider how this plays out in the simplest of moments. When you observe a problem with anger, you feel it grow larger in your awareness. The details multiply. The weight increases until the problem seems to occupy the whole room. But when you observe the same situation with curiosity, or even tenderness, something softens. Possibilities begin to show themselves. What looked like a wall reveals a door. Nothing outside has shifted, only the frequency of your observation. It is much like sunlight falling through a stained glass window. The same light shines, but the color it casts depends on the glass it passes through. Your emotions are the glass, tinting the light of your observation. Fear darkens it, painting the world in shadow. Love brightens it, flooding the room with color. The universe simply reflects back what shines through you. There was a time in my life when I believed discipline of the mind was enough, that if I could control my thoughts, I could control reality. But thoughts without emotion are like seeds without water. They remain dormant. It is emotion, the living water, that gives them weight, that calls them from possibility into form. This is why worry manifests so effectively. It is infused with strong feeling. And this is also why love is the most powerful creative force we can wield, because its frequency carries a clarity that resonates through every layer of reality. Have you ever sat quietly and noticed how different your body feels when you dwell on fear compared to when you dwell on love? Fear tightens the chest, quickens the breath, makes the shoulders heavy. Love loosens everything. It widens the lungs, slows the heart, relaxes the muscles. The body, again, is the proof of what your observation is doing. The intensity of your emotional focus is not just shaping your mood. It is sculpting your reality. Some people ask, does this mean I must never feel fear? Never feel anger? Never feel grief? The answer is gentler than that. These emotions are not enemies. They are signals. To feel them is human, but to dwell on them with intensity, to stare at them as if they were the only truth, that is what collapses them into lived experience. When you feel fear rise, acknowledge it, breathe through it, and then choose to turn your gaze elsewhere. The same energy that could have built a prison becomes the energy that builds a bridge. I recall one evening, during a time of great uncertainty, when everything in me wanted to panic, my mind raced with what-ifs. My chest burned with dread. In that moment, instead of feeding the fire, I placed my hand on my heart and whispered, "Show me another way of seeing this." I didn't deny the fear, but I didn't worship it either. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the feeling shifted. An idea kami, a small, practical step I could take. Within days, the situation lightened. It wasn't magic in the sense of bypassing reality. It was magic in the sense of tuning to another frequency, one that opened possibilities instead of closing them. This is the power of observation, married with emotion. It is not about pretending. It is about choosing where to let your heart rest. You can stare at the storm until it grows, or you can notice the break in the clouds and walk toward the light. Both are real in potential. The one you live is the one you feed with your feeling. So I say to you, be gentle with what you observe, not fearful of your own thoughts. not rigid with control, but gentle. Remember that your heart is the lens through which you see the world. Look with suspicion, and the world will seem hostile. Look with trust, and it will show you trustworthiness. Look with love, and love will gather around you, like birds drawn to seed. The truth is simple, though not always easy. Life is not measuring your worthiness. It is mirroring your frequency. Each emotion you bring to your observation is a tuning fork, and the universe sings back in harmony. If fear calls forth more fear, then love calls forth more love. And at any moment, you are free to choose which song you will amplify. 3. The creative silence. There are times in life when the strongest thing you can do is not to push forward, not to wrestle with circumstances, not to force an outcome, but to stop, to pause, to let the dust settle and allow silence to hold you. We are taught that progress comes only through effort, through doing, through trying harder than before. But there is another power, quiété but deeper, that emerges when you no longer struggle against life. The power of silence. I learned this truth not in moments of success, but in the hardest hours of my life, when the mind was exhausted from constant planning and analyzing, when the heart ached from chasing answers that never came. I found myself sinking into stillness, not because I chose it, but because I had nothing left to give. And in that stillness, I discovered a surprising thing: the world did not fall apart when I stopped trying to hold it together. Instead, a kind of space opened. It was not filled with thoughts or words. It was simply presence, a quiet field where something new could be born. Silence is not emptiness. It is not the absence of life. It is the fertile soil of creation. Imagine a field left untouched through winter. At first glance, it may seem barren, lifeless, but underneath, the ground is resting, renewing itself, preparing to nourish the seeds of spring. In the same way, when you allow yourself to enter silence, your mind rests, your spirit gathers strength, and your awareness becomes clear enough to plant the seeds of new realities. The trouble is, most of us are afraid of silence. We equate it with loneliness, with lack, with nothingness. We fill our days with noise, television, conversations, the endless scroll of a glowing screen, because the quiet feels uncomfortable. But in truth, silence is not your enemy. It is your home. It is the place where you meet yourself beyond fear, beyond desire, beyond the frantic chase to become someone else. Think of the ocean. On the surface, the waves crash, noisy and restless, mirroring the turbulence of the mind. But deep below, there is stillness, immense, calm, undisturbed. That depth is always there, whether or not the surface is storming. Silence is that depth within you. When you stop fighting with your thoughts, you begin to sink beneath them, into a space where observation is pure and unclouded. From there, life begins to reorganize itself around you. I remember sitting one evening, after days of relentless mental chatter, simply staring out the window. For once, I didn't try to solve anything. I didn't try to rehearse what I should say to others, or imagine what might go wrong tomorrow. I just sat, empty, letting the silence wash over me. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And slowly, in that space, I felt a peace rising. Not the peace of everything being solved, but the peace of not needing to solve. Out of that quiet, a clarity came, like a gentle whisper, not an answer in words, but a shift in perception, a reminder that I was not abandoned, that life was still carrying me, even when I had stopped pushing. This is why silence is creative, because in silence, you stop trying to force reality into shape. You stop projecting your fear into tomorrow or your regret into yesterday. You return to the only place where creation is possible, the present moment. And in that moment, your observation becomes pure, unclouded by desperation or resistance. It is like planting a seed in clean soil, rather than in soil polluted with worry. The seed doesn't need your constant tugging to grow. It needs space, patience, trust. Perhaps you've noticed this in your own life. When you push too hard for an answer, it stays hidden. But when you walk away, take a shower, sit quietly, suddenly the answer appears. Not because it came from outside, but because the silence within you allowed it to surface. The same is true for healing. The body doesn't heal because we demand it. It heals when we allow it, when we give it rest, when we stop interfering. Silence is not passive. It is the most active cooperation with life you can give. Silence also teaches you humility. It shows you that you don't have to control everything to be safe. That life doesn't require your constant interference to keep turning. And strangely, this humility doesn't make you weaker. It makes you freer. You realize you can rest, you can breathe, you can allow, and still life carries you forward. In fact, it carries you better than when you are thrashing against the current. I often compare silence to the pause between musical notes. Without those pauses, music would be unbearable, just noise. But because of the rests, the spaces, the music breathes, it flows, it moves the heart. In the same way, the pauses of silence in your life are not interruptions of living. They are what make living harmonious. They give meaning to the sound, shape to the song. So if you find yourself weary from trying, if your mind is a storm of questions, if your heart is tired of striving, allow silence, not as an escape, not as avoidance, but as the soil of creation. Seek quietly, let the breath come and go. Let the world exist without your interference, and notice what arises. At first, perhaps, only discomfort, but wait longer, and you will feel the depth, the quiet field, the place where your observation becomes clear enough to birth a new reality. You don't have to force life into being. You don't have to wrestle it into shape. You are life, and life already knows how to unfold when you let it. Silence is not the absence of creation. It is the womb of creation, and in its gentle embrace, you will remember that the most powerful thing you can sometimes do is nothing at all. 4. Consciousness and reality. There is a tendency to think of the observer effect as something that belongs only in science, an abstract idea reserved for laboratories, microscopes, and the invisible dance of subatomic particles. But life has a way of revealing that the deepest truths are not confined to sterile walls or academic theories. They are alive in your every breath, in the way you speak to your children, in the way you carry your body through the day, in the way you choose to see yourself when the mirror feels unkind. The truth is, simple consciousness and reality are not separate. They are two sides of the same fabric. What you observe with the energy of your awareness becomes the pattern that reality reflects back. It does not wait for scientists to validate it. It is already happening, quietly, moment by moment. In the texture of your life, I came to understand this, not through intellectual study, but through lived experience. For a long time, I believed I was at the mercy of circumstance. Bills arrived, relationships faltered, my body carried pain, and I thought, this is life happening to me. I am a victim of what is. But over time, I noticed a strange thing. The more I fixated on my problems, the more they multiplied. The more I talked about my limitations, the more they defined me. And on rare occasions, when I allowed myself to focus instead on gratitude, on possibility, on love, life responded in kind. Not instantly, not like a fairy tale, but steadily, consistently, like the world was echoing back the frequency of my gaze. That was the beginning of seeing consciousness, not as a passive witness, but as an active participant in creation. The observer effect was not confined to quantum physics. It was written into the very fabric of daily living. Think of your attention like a spotlight. Wherever you shine it, reality begins to take shape. If you point it toward fear, that fear becomes magnified, alive in your body, echoed in your circumstances. If you point it toward love, love expands, infusing your relationships, your health, your work. The light itself does not judge. It does not ask if what you are focusing on is good or bad. It simply illuminates, strengthens, and gives form. This is why you are not a powerless victim. The world is not an unmovable stone crushing down upon you. It is more like clay, soft in the hands of consciousness, waiting to be shaped by the quality of your attention. When you understand this, you begin to reclaim your role, not as someone at the mercy of chance, but as someone with the quiet, steady ability to choose. Of course, this does not mean you will never face challenges. Storms still come, illness still visits, loss still touches us all. But even in these seasons, the power of your consciousness remains. You may not control the weather of life, but you can choose how to hold the umbrella, how to walk through the rain, and that choice changes everything. The one who focuses only on the storm drowns in despair. The one who notices the break in the clouds learns that even the darkest skies contain light. I remember a period when everything seemed to collapse at once: work unstable, health declining, relationships strained. It felt unbearable, as if I had no control over anything. But one morning, sitting in quiet reflection, I realized I had been giving my entire spotlight to fear. Every conversation with myself was about what might go wrong. Every breath carried worry. Reality had no choice but to mirror it. And in that recognition, I made a simple, gentle decision to shift my gaze, not to deny the problems, but to observe them differently, to ask, what is still working, what is still here to love? At first, it felt like nothing changed, but slowly, the energy shifted. The body felt lighter. Unexpected opportunities appeared. Conversations softened. It was as though reality itself was reorganizing. Not because the world outside had suddenly been fixed, but because the consciousness within had chosen to look through another lens. This is the essence of the observer effect in daily life. What you observe with presence and feeling becomes real for you. Consciousness does not merely report reality, it shapes it. And when you realize this, you hold in your hands a key more powerful than circumstance. It is like sitting at the edge of a river. You can choose to stare only at the debris floating by, convincing yourself the river is polluted and hopeless. Or you can widen your gaze, notice the sunlight glinting on the surface, the fish darting beneath, the endless flow of life, carrying itself forward. Both realities exist within the same river. The one you live is the one you allow your consciousness to magnify. So let me speak gently. Here you are not small. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are the awareness through which reality learns to take shape. Every moment, you are invited to choose fear or love, despair or hope, judgment or gratitude. And whatever you choose to observe with intensity becomes the architecture of your world. When you begin to understand this, victimhood fades. Not because life stops being hard, but because you realize you are never just a passive recipient. You are a participant. You are the light shining on possibility. And that light is enough to open doors you once believed were sealed shut. Consciousness and reality are not separate. They are one dance, one breath, one unfolding. And when you choose to see yourself not as an outsider, but as a co-creator, you begin to live differently, more gently, more bravely, more free. 5. Signs of upgrading. There are moments in life when the ordinary begins to feel unusual. When what once seemed like coincidence starts carrying a weight you can't ignore. Maybe you've noticed time itself bending, stretching wide when you fall into deep focus, or collapsing in on itself when you are swept into an intense flow. Perhaps you've seen technology behave strangely around you. Your phone battery draining too quickly, lights flickering, or devices freezing, just as your emotions rise sharply. To the logical mind, these things may seem like random malfunctions, but to the deeper awareness within you, they are signs. They are whispers from life itself that your consciousness is learning to touch reality at a more subtle, more powerful level. These are the signs of upgrading. They are not punishments, not accidents, but invitations. They point to the truth that your awareness is no longer confined to the surface level of existence. It is beginning to influence the quantum fabric beneath. I remember vividly a season when synchronicities flooded my days. Numbers appeared in repeating patterns. 11, 11 on the clock. The same 3 digits showing up on receipts, license plates, addresses. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was meaningless. But the persistence of it, the timing, the way it connected to what I was thinking or feeling, became impossible to dismiss. Around the same time, my dreams grew more vivid, sometimes blurring into waking reality. I would dream of an encounter, only to meet that very person the next day. I would dream of conversations, and then hear those exact words spoken later in waking life. It was as if life itself was rehearsing with me in the dream state, preparing me for what was coming. These are not random oddities. They are signs that your consciousness is tuning itself to deeper layers of reality. They are like training sessions, reminders to pay attention. Just as an athlete learns through small drills before stepping into a game, your spirit practices through synchronicities and dreams before stepping into the full recognition of its creative power. One of the most striking signs is the way time behaves. When you are fully present, when your mind quiets and your attention sharpens, minutes can feel like hours. You notice more detail, hear more nuance, sense more of life's texture. Other times, when you are deeply absorbed, hours vanish in what feels like moments. These distortions are not tricks of the brain. They are reminders that time itself is flexible, responsive to the depth of your observation. In those moments, your consciousness is touching the timeless field from which reality emerges. Another sign is how energy interacts with the world around you. Animals, for instance, may begin to respond differently. A dog stares at you with unusual intensity, or a bird lands closer than usual, as though drawn to the calm coherence you radiate. Even people may feel it. They may tell you they feel more relaxed in your presence, or more alive. What they are sensing is not your personality, but the frequency of your consciousness. When your awareness grows coherent, it ripples outward, affecting everything it touches. And then there are the synchronicities, those strange alignments where life seems to anticipate your thoughts. You think of someone, and they call. You wonder about a solution, and it appears in the most unexpected place. You find yourself in the right place, at the right time, again and again, until you realize it is no longer luck. These moments are not anomalies. They are the early signs of you remembering how reality actually works. That observation and frequency collapse possibility into form. When I first experienced these signs, I confess I felt unsettled. I wondered if I was imagining things, or if something was wrong with me. But with time, I came to understand that these were not hallucinations or delusions. They were confirmations, gentle nudges from life saying, yes, you are awakening. Yes, your consciousness is expanding. It is important to hold these signs with humility. They are not badges of superiority, not proofs that you are special in a way others are not. Every human being carries this potential. The signs simply mean you are beginning to notice what has always been there. If you mistake them for status, you will miss their true purpose. They are not to inflate your ego, but to train your awareness. They are lessons in trust, in surrender, in learning to live as a conscious participant in creation. So when the clock shows repeating numbers, pause. Instead of dismissing it, let it remind you, I am in sync with life. When technology misbehaves as your emotions surge, smile gently. My energy is stronger than I knew. When dreams blur into waking reality, take them as rehearsals. I am practicing my creative power. Each sign is like a breadcrumb on the path, guiding you back to remembrance. And here is the deeper truth. These signs are not the destination. They are not the goal. They are markers along the way, pointing you toward the real transformation. That you are not a victim of reality, but a co-creator of it. They remind you that life is not rigid, fixed, immovable. It is fluid, malleable, responsive, and the more consciously you observe, the more gracefully it bends to the shape of your awareness. When you recognize these signs for what they are, fear begins to fall away. You no longer see yourself as at the mercy of random chance. You begin to realize that reality is alive with conversation, speaking back to you through numbers, through dreams, through synchronicities. It is not trying to trick you, it is trying to teach you. So if you are experiencing these things, time bending, technology responding, synchronicities piling up, do not worry, do not doubt your sanity. Know instead that you are remembering. Your consciousness is upgrading, preparing you to live not as an unconscious observer, but as a conscious creator. And with each sign, the universe is whispering, keep going. You are ready for more. 6. The difference between unconscious and conscious observation. For much of our lives, we move through the world as if carried by a current we cannot control. We see problems and believe they are permanent. We feel lack and believe it defines us. We dwell on what is missing, what is wrong, what might go badly tomorrow. This is unconscious observation, the state in which most of humanity lives without realizing it. It is not evil. It is not deliberate. It is simply habit. The mind, trained by years of conditioning, points its spotlight toward fear, toward scarcity, towards struggle. And reality, faithful as ever, mirrors back exactly what the mind holds. Unconscious observation is like watering weeds in a garden without noticing. You don't mean to encourage them, but your attention feeds them all the same. You replay old arguments in your head, and the feelings of bitterness grow stronger. You worry about money, and somehow more bills appear. You fear rejection, and it seems to meet you at every turn. The garden is not punishing you. It is only growing what you have watered with your gaze. I have lived many years in this way, believing I was unlucky, believing life was stacked against me. It felt as though no matter how hard I tried, the same patterns repeated. And then, slowly, I began to see that I was the common thread in all of those experiences, not as a victim, but as an unconscious creator. I was the one pointing the spotlight of awareness at fear, lack, and failure, and life obediently responded. Conscious observation, by contrast, is like turning that spotlight with intention. It is not about ignoring problems or pretending pain does not exist. It is about choosing to notice what uplifts, what heals, what strengthens. When you shift from unconscious to conscious observation, you begin to see possibility where before there was only despair. You begin to notice solutions peeking through the cracks of difficulty. You begin to sense love woven into places where fear once seemed absolute. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Unconscious observation says, this is all there is. Conscious observation says, this is one version, but others exist, and I choose to look toward them. Unconscious observation collapses possibility into limitation. Conscious observation collapses possibility into expansion. I remember a time when my finances were in chaos. Bills stacked higher than my income. And every morning I woke with a knot in my stomach. I thought about money constantly, but always with fear. I observed the lack so intensely that lack grew larger. Then one day, almost out of desperation, I asked myself, what if I looked at this differently? Instead of staring at what was missing, I began to notice small ways abundance was already present. A friend's kindness, a meal shared, even the simple fact that I had a roof above my head. At first, it felt forced, but the more I observed these small signs with genuine gratitude, the more my reality shifted. Opportunities arrived. Work flowed more steadily. The situation began to turn, not because the universe suddenly took pity on me, but because my observation changed. Conscious observation is not about learning to create from nothing. It is about remembering that creation is already happening through you every moment. Whether you realize it or not, you don't need to learn how to create. You need only to learn how to choose. And the choice is made with your gaze. With the quality of your attention, think of it like a radio. Countless stations exist, each broadcasting their own songs, their own voices. If you leave the dial unturned, static fills the air, and you feel lost in the noise. That is unconscious observation, receiving whatever comes, without awareness. But when you turn the dial with intention, when you choose the station you wish to hear, the music changes. The air is filled with harmony instead of chaos. Conscious observation is tuning your inner dial toward the frequency you wish to live. It does not mean denying reality. If the storm is raging outside, conscious observation does not require you to pretend the sun is shining. It asks you instead to choose how you will meet the storm. Will you observe only the destruction, feeding despair? Or will you observe the resilience, the neighbors helping each other, the way storms always pass? One gaze deepens fear, the other cultivates hope. The storm is the same. Your experience of it depends on your observation. The real gift of conscious observation is freedom. Freedom from cycles that repeat endlessly when you are unaware. Freedom from the belief that you are powerless. When you recognize that your gaze has weight, that your attention is a creative force, you reclaim authorship of your life. You stop being merely a character in someone else's story and begin to live as a co-writer of your own. This shift does not happen overnight. You may still find yourself slipping into unconscious patterns, staring too long at problems, rehearsing fears. That is human. But now you know, now you have the choice. And each time you gently redirect your gaze toward gratitude, toward possibility, toward love, you strengthen the muscle of conscious observation. Slowly, steadily, the garden of your life begins to bloom with what you have chosen to water. So let me leave you with this thought. Unconscious observation is not your fate. It is simply a starting point. You were never meant to be stuck there. Consciousness, by its nature, longs to awaken. And once you see the difference, even once, you can never truly go back. You may falter, but you will remember. You will remember that you do not need to fight to create a new reality. You only need to choose, again and again, with the quiet power of your attention. And when you do, life will mirror back the truth. You were never just a bystander. You were the observer all along, the one who decides which version of reality becomes real. 7. The stages of experience. There are seasons in life when everything seems to fall apart. Friendships end. Jobs slip through your fingers. Health wavers, or silence stretches so wide that you wonder if life has forgotten you. To the mind, these times appear meaningless, wasted, even cruel. Yet, when you look back later with wiser eyes, you begin to see them differently. They were not punishments. They were training grounds. They were the stages of experience that prepared you for a strength you did not yet know you carried. Loneliness, for instance, often feels like abandonment. We sit in empty rooms, aching for someone to understand, to reach across the silence and remind us that we matter. But loneliness is not the absence of love. It is the space where you are taught to meet yourself. In those quiet hours, when no one else is watching, you begin to notice the voice within. You begin to feel the shape of your own presence. And though it hurts at first, this is the foundation of all awakening. Learning that you are never truly alone, because your own consciousness is your constant companion. Loss, too, feels unbearable when it arrives. The empty chair at the table, the silence where laughter once lived, the emptiness in your chest. It is enough to make you believe life has turned against you. But loss is not life's cruelty. It is life's way of clearing space. Every ending creates a hollow, and though it feels unbearable at first, that hollow becomes the vessel into which new awareness can pour. Without endings, there is no room for beginnings. Without loss, we would cling forever to what we have known and never grow into what we are meant to become. And then there are the waiting times, the long stretches when nothing seems to happen, when prayers echo back in silence, when you feel suspended between worlds. Waiting can be the hardest stage, because it feels so passive, so pointless. Yet waiting is not emptiness. It is incubation, like the seed beneath the soil, unseen but alive. Your consciousness is growing roots in the dark. It is learning patience, resilience, and trust. These are not wasted months or years. They are sacred pauses, designed to teach you how to observe without desperation, how to hold your gaze without collapsing into fear. I often think of these stages as a kind of quantum quarantine. During times of isolation, loss, or waiting, you are gently separated from the collective noise, the endless stream of unconscious observation that might otherwise keep you trapped. It is as though life itself says, "Step aside for a while. Be still. Let your eyes adjust to a new light." Without this separation, your awareness could not sharpen. You would be swept along by the patterns of the crowd, never discovering your own capacity to see with clarity. When I look back at the hardest chapters of my life, I see now that they were not mistakes. The heartbreaks, the failures, the nights spent in restless despair, they were classrooms. Each taught me something essential about myself and about reality. The loneliness taught me to listen inwardly. The loss taught me that endings are gateways. The waiting taught me patience and trust. These were not punishments for my flaws, but lessons preparing me for a larger responsibility, the ability to observe consciously, to create with awareness rather than blindly. You see, strength is not built in comfort. It is built in struggle. Just as a muscle must tear slightly in order to grow stronger, so too must our hearts be stretched by challenge in order to expand. Every sorrow you have endured has prepared you to hold more love. Every silence you have sat through has prepared you to hear the whispers of truth. Every loss you have grieved has prepared you to recognize the eternal nature of life itself. And perhaps this is the most healing perspective. Nothing you have suffered has been wasted. Each stage of experience has been woven into the fabric of your becoming. Even the moments you would rather forget are part of the training that allows you to stand here today with more depth, more empathy, more resilience. So if you are in a season of loneliness, know that it is a classroom, not a punishment. If you are walking through loss, know that it is an opening, not an ending. If you are waiting and nothing seems to move, know that beneath the surface, roots are forming, foundations are being laid. Life has not abandoned you. It is shaping you. It is refining your gaze so that when the time comes, you will observe not with fear, but with clarity, not with desperation, but with quiet power. One day, you will look back and realize that the moments you thought were breaking, you were the very moments that built you. You will see that the stages of experience were not detours from your path. They were your path, and through them, You were being prepared, not for survival alone, but for conscious creation. When you understand this, something inside relaxes. You no longer fight against what is happening. You begin to trust that even the hardest stages have meaning, and in that trust, you discover the simple but profound truth: you are not being punished by life. You are being prepared by it. 8. The collective meaning. It is easy to believe that our lives are private, that what we think or feel belongs only to us. We imagine our thoughts vanish into silence, that our inner world does not ripple beyond the edges of our skin. But this is not so. Every conscious observation you make, every time you choose love over fear, every time you soften your gaze toward possibility instead of despair, you leave a mark in the larger field of humanity. You are not only shaping your personal reality, you are participating in the shaping of our collective one. Think of it like standing in a dark room with many others. If you light a candle, the room does not remain the same. The glow touches everyone present. They may not know where the flame came from, but they feel its warmth. They see more clearly because of it. Your conscious observation is that candle. It illuminates not only your path, but also the paths of those walking beside you, even if they never know your name. I began to understand this truth during times when I thought my own growth was invisible. There were days when I sat in silence, breathing through grief, choosing again and again to turn my gaze toward hope rather than despair. It felt personal, even small. Yet, to my surprise, people around me began to respond differently. They spoke of feeling calmer in my presence, of feeling seen, of feeling inspired to face their own struggles. I realized then, the work I do within myself is not contained. It radiates outward, subtle but undeniable. This is the collective meaning of observation. Consciousness is not isolated. It is entangled, woven together like threads in a vast fabric. When you change your thread, when you align it with love, coherence, and clarity, the whole fabric shifts, even if only slightly. And when enough individuals make this choice, the collective field transforms. Technology may advance, societies may innovate, but the true evolution of humanity will not come from machines or systems. It will come from individuals, ordinary men and women, who dare to awaken, who dare to look with conscious eyes, who choose to see possibility where others see only limitation, who choose to observe with love instead of fear. These choices, repeated quietly in living rooms, in workplaces, in moments of solitude, accumulate, they create what some call a morphic field, a resonance that makes it easier for others to awaken too. Perhaps you have felt this yourself. You walk into a room and sense a heaviness, even before anyone speaks. Or you enter another space and feel lighter, calmer, though nothing obvious has changed. This is the collective field. It carries the echoes of countless observations, the imprints of countless choices, and your own observation contributes to it every day. It is humbling to realize this. It means that even when you feel powerless, you are not. Every time you choose to breathe instead of panic, to forgive instead of resent, to love instead of fear, you are sending ripples into the collective. You are creating a reference point, a signal in the field that others can tune into. Perhaps someone across the world, struggling in their own darkness, suddenly feels a burst of hope they cannot explain. They do not know it, but they are catching your signal. They are benefiting from the coherence you have cultivated, benefiting from the coherence you have cultivated. And this is why your awakening matters. It is not selfish work. It is service. By healing your own perception, you heal the larger web of life. By lifting your own gaze, you lift the eyes of others. By becoming a conscious observer, you contribute to the evolution of us all. I have seen this in the simplest of ways. A smile offered from a place of genuine love softens the anger in a stranger. A word of kindness spoken with true presence, ripples outward, changing not only that person's day, but also the way they interact with others. A single act of conscious observation, rooted in love, can touch countless lives beyond your own. This does not mean you need to be perfect. It does not mean you must never feel fear or anger. It means that when you awaken enough to notice, you hold the power to choose. And each time you choose consciously, you contribute to something far larger than yourself. Humanity is at a threshold. Old ways of living, driven by fear, by competition, by unconscious observation of lack, are breaking down. We see the chaos in the world and wonder if things are falling apart. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. Many individuals, quietly, without recognition, are lighting candles. They are learning to observe differently. They are planting seeds in the collective field, and these seeds will one day bloom into a humanity more awake, more compassionate, more free. So never underestimate the value of your own conscious gaze. You may think it changes only you, but it changes far more. It strengthens the signal of love in a noisy world. It becomes a reference point for others searching for light. It becomes part of the invisible fabric of human evolution. You are not just living your life. You are participating in the awakening of a species. And each time you observe consciously, each time you choose love over fear, you help tilt the balance of the collective toward hope, toward healing, toward a future where humanity remembers its true power. 9. Personal testimony. There was a time in my life when I thought everything was slipping beyond repair. Perhaps you know those seasons. The ones where every effort feels like it collapses before your eyes. Where no matter how tightly you hold on, life keeps unraveling. For me, it came as a convergence of struggles, financial strain that kept me awake at night, relationships dissolving under the weight of unspoken pain, and a body so weary, it felt like a stranger to me. I believed, with every fiber of my being, that life was happening to me, that I was its victim, its unwilling participant. Each day, I woke and replayed my problems in my mind, almost like a ritual. I counted every bill, every mistake, every potential disaster waiting in the shadows, and I thought this constant analyzing, this endless replay, was a form of problem solving. But what I didn't know was that I was feeding the very thing I wanted to escape. My observation, drenched in fear and worry, was not neutral. It was creative. By pouring my attention into lack and despair, I was collapsing more of it into my experience. Then came a day I will never forget. Exhaustion had drained me to the point where I could no longer keep up the fight. I stopped, not out of wisdom, but because I had nothing left to give. I sat in silence. No plans, no frantic problem solving, just silence. And in that silence, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't a dramatic miracle. It wasn't lightning from the sky. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible. The world around me felt softer, less hostile. The edges of my fear began to blur. And for the first time in months, I felt a hint of peace. From that day forward, I began to experiment. Instead of staring at the problems, I began to look for even the smallest signs of solutions. Instead of replaying my failures, I observed the tiniest moments of possibility. Instead of bracing for the worst, I wondered what the best might look like. At first, it felt unnatural, even forced. My old habits pulled me back toward worry, like a strong tide. But I stayed with it. Gently, patiently, I shifted my gaze. And then life began to shift with me. Opportunities appeared where before there had only been walls. People showed up with kindness, with support, with possibilities I hadn't imagined. My body, once so heavy with stress, began to regain its energy. The external world reorganized itself, not because fate suddenly took pity on me, But because I was no longer collapsing the same painful patterns with unconscious observation, I was learning to observe consciously. It was in this season that I discovered the most profound truth of my life. Reality is not something happening to me. Reality is happening through me. My consciousness is not standing apart, watching from the outside. It is the very lens shaping what I live. This is not philosophy. It is lived experience. And once you taste it, you cannot return to the old belief of being a powerless victim. What struck me most was how immediate the feedback was. When I slipped into old patterns of fear, life echoed it back quickly. Unexpected expenses, tense conversations, restless nights. But when I shifted, even slightly, toward gratitude, toward possibility, the feedback was just as swift. Small wins, unexpected blessings, peaceful sleep. It was as though life was saying, "Yes, this is how it works. Keep noticing." I share this testimony not to set myself apart, but to remind you, this is not reserved for me. It is not rare, nor mystical. It is available to anyone willing to try. You don't need to master advanced techniques or recite perfect affirmations. All that's required is awareness and the courage to redirect your gaze. The experiment is simple. Notice what happens when you feed fear with your attention. Then notice what happens when you feed love, gratitude, or hope. The difference will reveal itself. I won't pretend it is easy at first. The mind loves its old patterns. Fear feels familiar, even comfortably. But with each small act of conscious observation, you carve a new pathway. It is like turning the wheel of a great ship. At first, the vessel resists. The momentum of old habits pushes against you. But hold steady, and slowly, the ship begins to turn. And when it does, the horizon opens, and you find yourself sailing in a new direction. Looking back now, I see that my darkest season was also my greatest teacher. It taught me that suffering is not random cruelty, but a mirror showing me the weight of my unconscious gaze. It taught me that silence is not emptiness, but the fertile ground of transformation. And it taught me that the smallest shift in observation, a choice to notice one ray of light instead of the surrounding darkness, can open the door to profound change. Reality did not suddenly become perfect. I still face challenges, but I no longer face them as a victim. I face them as an observer, aware that my gaze holds power, and that awareness changes everything. So if you are listening to this and find yourself in your own storm, let my testimony be a reminder. You are not powerless. You do not need to fix everything at once. You need only to pause, to breathe, to redirect your gaze gently toward possibility. Begin small. Notice a single thing you can appreciate today. Allow yourself to imagine, even faintly, that life might carry more kindness than you expect. That shift in observation, however small, is enough to set reality in motion. Because reality is not fixed. It is fluid. It flows through you, shaped by the quality of your attention. And when you learn to observe with love instead of fear, you will see, as I did, that life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. The key has always been in your hands, you see now. The key was never hidden from you. It has been in your hands all along, every day. In every moment, you have been using the observer effect, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes carelessly, often without realizing the depth of your own influence. Life has been faithfully mirroring back the quality of your gaze, whether shaped by fear, by doubt, by resentment, or by love, by gratitude, by trust. Reality has not been ignoring you. It has been listening all along, and this is perhaps the most liberating truth. Nothing outside of you needs to grant you permission to create differently. No external force needs to shift first. The shift begins within, in the way you choose to look, what you long for, what you have dreamed of, what you thought was far away. It already exists. It is here, alive in the quantum field of possibility. All it waits for is the moment you align, the moment you look at it with enough presence, enough faith, enough love to bring it forward into form. This is not about pretending life is perfect. It is not about denying pain or difficulty. It is about reclaiming the truth that even in the presence of challenge, you still hold the power of observation. You can choose to see only what is broken, or you can choose to see what is being built. You can choose to stare at fear until it consumes you, or you can look toward love until it expands. The circumstances may not change overnight, but your inner reality changes instantly when you shift your gaze, and from that shift, the external begins to reorganize. I have lived both ways. I have lived unconsciously, staring at my wounds until they bled into every corner of my life, believing I was powerless, waiting for the world to fix itself so I could finally breathe. And I have lived consciously, choosing to look with awareness, with compassion, with gratitude, even when nothing seemed to justify it. The difference is night and day. One path leaves you small, contracted, trapped. The other opens space, possibility, freedom. The only difference between them is not the world outside, but the way I chose to observe it. So the question now is simple, though not always easy. How will you look? Will you continue to look unconsciously, letting old fears dictate what becomes real? Will you allow the noise of the collective to steer your gaze toward lack, toward despair, toward hostility? Or will you begin to look consciously, to notice possibility, to choose love, to align with the deeper truth that life is flowing through you, not against you? You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need to master yourself in a single day. All you need is to begin, to pause in the midst of your worry and ask, what else is possible here? To notice, even for a moment, what is working instead of what is failing, to look at yourself with a softer gaze, with one small gesture of compassion. These are not small things. They are the very substance of transformation. Remember, the reality you desire is not a distant dream. It is already alive as potential. The version of you who is free, who is whole, who is at peace. That version already exists in the field of possibilities. Your work is not to invent it, not to force it into being, but to align with it, to look in its direction long enough, with enough steadiness, that it collapses into your lived experience. It is like tuning a radio. The music you long to hear is already playing. It does not need to be created from scratch. It only waits for you to turn the dial, to match the frequency. Once you do, the music fills the room. In the same way, once you align your observation with love, trust, and gratitude, the life you long for flows naturally into form. And so the choice returns to you, as it always has. Will you keep living unconsciously, letting fear decide what becomes real? Or will you step into the quiet power of conscious observation, choosing deliberately, gently, courageously, the reality you wish to live? The answer is not written in the stars. It is written in your gaze. In this very moment, every breath you take is an opportunity to choose again, to look with softer eyes, to remember the truth that has been whispering to you all along. You are not a victim of reality. You are the observer, the participant, the co-creator. The key has always been in your hands. And life, patient and faithful, has been waiting for you to use it consciously. So I ask you, not as someone speaking from a distance, but as someone who has walked through the dark and found this truth, will you continue to look unconsciously and live randomly, or will you begin, here and now, to observe with awareness, to live with intention? The choice, like it always has, rests in you.